From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, how are you today? I'm looking forward for us to have a chat just one-on-one. So that's going to be our game plan for today.
Oh, I like that game plan, Steve. I'm doing good. And yourself?
I'm doing well. You and I had done some talking about some of uh, our day-to-day work, and we're both looking at doing some recruiting and hiring. And I know that that's a big topic in the industry these days, whether it's the attracting new talent to the industry or people trying to help others find new roles or trying to just prepare for your next opportunity. So we decided that would probably be a good topic for us to discuss on the show, and specifically how programmers can find a next opportunity, or how can you break into the industry as a programmer. So um, I'll kind of throw it over to you if you wanted to just give a few ideas. Let's first start with what does it take to maybe break into the industry as a programmer? Because we say that we're looking for new blood, but we also have to be able to be prepared to take them on and do what it takes to get them up to speed.
Uh, uh, there's a couple of things that we could tackle or a couple paths we can go down on this. I really think the the first one is I think we need to almost come up with a standard title because one company might call it AV programmer, one company might call it software developer, next one is calling it a AV engineer. Like they throw all these titles out there. And I don't know about you, Steve, and your company, but especially in higher ed, titles mean nothing, and they award you no points. We just make up titles as we go sometimes, and a lot of times they don't fit what the job duty is. So I think coming up with a standard way of titling it, because this way the person who's looking either to advance their role as a programmer or even get into it, they actually know what they're looking at.
I like that. I too feel like titles are not so significant, but what I've learned in talking with members of my team is that they mean a lot to them. And I don't know if that's different in the business world versus the um, education space, or in different capacities. But I was corrected in that that's something that is very important, and along with that, being able to show a career path was important. So, but I think that your thought is a good one, and it's actually something that somebody spoke about recently that heard, was that if we do have some standardized titles, that would match up more with what would be in other software developer roles, or whether it's IT or just in technology companies, and be able to say, you're a developer one, a developer two, junior developer, a senior developer, and then maybe branch them out too. But I like having something like that with the milestones that go along with accomplishing it, so it's a little bit more objective. But your idea is really a good one, because I think that there is a ton of confusion. Everybody calls things something different.
Yeah, and they do. And like I know one thing I felt from my previous employer, a lot of the jobs were state created job titles. So it wasn't like even the university had a choice over the title. And the what was weird is a lot of these folks who are making the title, especially for entry level, they have no clue what the people are doing. Um, like I know I started at what they called a public professional services four, where you go from four to one, a PPS four, I think it was. And which is great. but so was someone in a mission whose role was only to answer phones. And I'm not discrediting that, but the skill sets are different. But
Hmm.
you both have the same title, both getting the same pay, both getting like all the same benefits and all that stuff. And it's like, so you see a very, you get some people who look at it and go, well, I'm making the same amount as that person. I'm crawling through ceilings and pulling wires or writing code, and they're answering the phone. And again, don't come at me. I am not discrediting people who answer phones. I know they're doing more than that, but it's really you can see some people got dismotivated because they were like, this is not fair. Um, so I know titles are, yeah, they're important, but I think they need to be clear so the person who's applying knows what their role is. Am I a administrator assistant who I am, where you're going to be a job answering phones and doing a lot of paperwork, or am I a developer one? Or am I a senior developer? And I'm expected to be pumping out so much code. Um, or hey, I know nothing about coding, but I want to learn. And this job is the saying AV programmer. Hey, this seems easy, but they're really looking for someone who has 10 years of experience in writing code. It's hard to tell by titles.
Yeah. And and I think unless there's some way of being able to classify things across the industry and have a common set of requirements for each of those roles so that people can reference it, I'm not sure if we're going to get there, but I think the idea is a good one. And I think um, at least being able to do that in certain organizations could be very beneficial. And publish what is required of each of those roles so that there's a way of being able to say, this is the role that I'm qualified for. Um,
No,
going
I
back
agree.
to what we were saying, about somebody who might want to get into the industry, might have the ambition or might have the skills, but doesn't they can't really demonstrate it. That's a tricky subject because I think that in certain organizations you can afford and to be able to bring on people at an intern level or at a very entry level where there's such a wide array of needs of that company and that they can be able to compensate for having a few people in that position, but by having by or offset it, let's say, by having a lot of other experienced people. But in smaller organizations and or smaller teams, perhaps like mine and yours, it's harder to do because there's not only are you paying somebody to um, learn, but you're also going to have to dedicate somebody else's time to help that person grow and learn and be oriented. So it's almost like a double whammy.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a double whammy. It's hard to say how to get into the industry because we both are looking for, oh, how do I want to put, every job is looking for that unicorn, that ideal candidate who's going to meet all the most jobs realize they're not going to get that unicorn, but they're going to try to get somebody as close to it as they can. But also, this is the negative side of it. They're going to try to pay as little as they can. They're going to want the Mercedes, but pay for a Honda. Um, so that is very hard because that deters some people because they see all these requirements because they know like the company is going to try to get the most bang for their buck. Um, like you said, but so we're as a entry person who's just, fresh out of college or fresh in the field, like you don't even have to go to college to get in this field. Like just someone who's really wants to get into it, like how do they even start? I always hear the story is, especially with AV programmers, is it's someone who carried the laptop. Like, oh, you're good with a laptop here. Now you're gonna write the code for it. Um, how do we get more, or wrong word there, more purposely, people who go in to be a programmer, not someone who's like, hey, I want to be a tech, and then I got thrown onto the programming side. So how do we get those folks in if we don't have a clear path for them in? Um, so that's a question. And I understand, like, yeah, like say, look at these larger companies. Yeah, the Fortune 500, see the ones who bringing in millions and billions of dollars. You would be a small fish in a big pond there. If you go into a smaller company, you could be, a small fish in a small pond, which is, I feel personally, is better for growth because you get more experience. But there's also a higher level of risk in taking that. I kind of chop it up is I had an old hobby of saltwater aquariums. And one of the things they always say is you look at the different tank sizes. You have really small tanks and you have really large tanks. Small tanks are easy to set up and get going. But the problem with those is one little thing's off, it affects the tank quickly. It doesn't recover well. Larger tank is you have a little more room to make a mistake, but also if that mistake spirals and scales and gets worse, it's harder to recover. So it both has a double-edged sword where, yeah, you can take a junior programmer, throw them into a huge company, but they may get lost, they learn bad habits, and they can actually long-term really hurt the company and hurt themselves. Or they can go into a small company, you know, so do some bad thing, and the small company will be like, hey, now you're hurting us. You cut the infection, the bad area, and then the small company can recover quickly, where a large company may not be able to recover.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because it I think we've all kind of been faced with this. It's not easy to start out and to break in, and we say we want to be inviting, and we say we have these opportunities and want new blood, and we need to find more ways to be able to onboard them. And I know that some look to the professional organizations like Avixa or an SCA or CEDIA, and some look to the manufacturers to help with that. But it's probably a good idea for us to find a way to find those hobbyists, those people who are willing to do these things for fun or have experience doing something either in our industry or like what we do to and then woo them into doing this as their job. That might be the best entry point. So some way that they could be able to get themselves up to speed. I recently had been approached by somebody who was looking for, and it's probably a good transition into the idea of, how do you find your next programming opportunity, but I was recently approached by somebody who was looking to pivot his career in the industry, and inquired about programming because he said it's something that he was interested in, dabbled in, and he wanted to be able to see if it was for him, or what's the where are the opportunities, the long term growth, and so forth. And I directed him in this case to be able to work with a control platform that he can run an emulation. He didn't need hardware, and he can find a little project to work on, as you always say, and kind of learn on his own. And once you get that under your belt, that gives you at least something to be able to bring to an interview and say, this is what I can do, and this is it may not be perfect, and I'm sure that there's ways that I can learn to do to grow and be better, but this is what I'm capable of now.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key is showing the drive. I'm sure you're this way, Steve. I don't want to assume, but I know like when I'm going for my hiring process and you know, I'm always looking for someone who's willing to show the drive. Like you can see that spark, that passion they have. It's easy to fluff a resume. It's easy to, go for a tech eval or something like that to a certain point. But it's hard to fake a passion and drive to like in that you can pick up just by talking with the person, seeing where their interests are, what they're trying to do. And that's, we need to have more of those conversations. But programmers are, I'll admit, they're not very social people. We always talk about that. Most IT people, most programmers, software developers especially, are the person sitting in the dark room with the glow of the monitor. Like they don't want to be social. Um, we are missing a lot of clue. Actually, I mean, I hate saying this, but appearances matter. Like when you go for that interview, you should be wearing at least a button-down shirt, if not a tie and a jacket. Not saying you need a full suit these days, but you don't show up to a job interview in shorts and a t-shirt. Um, you kind of you got to present yourself. I don't like quoting Joe Way sometimes, but as he said, all of life is sales. You got to be able to sell yourself.
I was totally thinking the same thing, and we shouldn't exclude the women in the industry
Yes.
too, and they also, being able to dress in business attire.
Yeah, no, very valid point there, Steve, and thank you for correcting that.
But yes, I would 100% agree, and I was thinking the same exact thing, that you have to learn to sell yourself, and it's just what life is all about. There are people that get opportunities dropped in their laps. Um, that's a combination of being probably at an elite level or being lucky. Everybody else has to pitch and promote themselves and put their best foot forward and demonstrate their um, desire for the role that they're applying for. And sometimes that's a hard thing, and you can get burned out doing it. But it's the more you could show that this is the job you really want, and present yourself in the best manner possible, it just increases your odds. And I think that everybody would agree that that's what your goal is.
Oh yeah, and I don't I'm not a big fan of that word luck. Oh, you just luck out. You got to make your own luck.
Yeah.
You got to put the work in, and you can see when the people don't want to put the work in, that's when it happens. Actually, I know a former guest of ours, Alex, he recommended a book to me not too long ago called Extreme Ownership. And at the end of the book, it's actually written by two former Navy SEALs. And it's a very good book, highly recommend it, but it talks about discipline. Um, and how, you have to get up, like, if you want time to do something, you got to make the time to do it. Either get up early, stay up late, whatever it is. And he was talking about, the author was talking about, saying getting up early. He actually sets three alarm clocks. He has the electrical one, he has a battery backup and a wind up. So he knows he gets up at time. And he always found that the better operators, the SEAL team, the troop person is called an operator. The better operators are the ones who get up, work out, tend to their gear. They can still be up late at night partying and doing what they need to do, but then they still get up that time. They work out, they do take care of gear, they're disciplined. So we need to be disciplined in our craft there as well. Need to sell ourselves. We need to know how we come across that discipline, put that stuff out there to people. Like if you're not getting the traction, um, you got to see why you're not getting that traction. Are you presenting yourself in the proper way, or are you, like, oh, I slept in today and I got up and I didn't put the work in. If you don't put the work in, you're not going to get the reward.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you've had this experience. So, um, because I have a small business and a small team, I basically see every resume that comes through, and the amount of people who don't really put in the effort, and just do the little things, and these days, I think everybody has AI on their mind, and a lot of the cover letters and resumes are contrived, and it's really when it's read by a computer, you can that can work, but when it's read by a human, it doesn't really work very well. And I think that it shows what where the effort is, and I'm not going to knock it because I think it could work for some roles, but it's an automatic no on my side when I see something that I know you're not really trying to apply for this job. You're just applying
Yep.
blindly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen those a couple times. Can not only do I get the resumes for people applying for my open positions, but I also student workers. Oddly enough, I've seen a couple that come across. You could tell it may not even be AI written, but you could tell they went to a template. But
Yeah.
you get the same kind of template, same style, format, same like information. You're like, okay, you really didn't think this through. And I think that what going back to how you get into an entry level. So we're talking more a little bit to the newer crowd, the people who are trying to get in, is be be mindful what you're putting on your resume and how you coming across. Like I always tell my student workers, your resume should be tailored to the job you're applying for. Don't go to the blanket resume templates and send that to every single one. Your resume should be tailored to the position that you're applying for. That requires you to do some research into the company. Like, I'll pick on Control Concept. They're a third party programming house. If you're applying for control concept, you should go see what they do, what's noted in the job description, like, and try to pull your experience to say, hey, I meet this requirement of control concept, and make sure that's highlighted in your resume. I mean, all my resumes for every job I applied for was tailored to the position and the place I was going for. But my current one, um, I knew they were looking for more leadership management, less technical. Yes, they wanted some technical, but so I made sure I highlight my leadership management side from, being the coaches and doing the administration in the club to what I oversaw student workers, project leads, and all that stuff at work. And left some of the technical stuff off my resume. That was like, okay, this doesn't fit what they're looking for. Now again, don't ever rely on a resume because people see that right away. So you got to do your homework. Don't like someone I had this on not too long ago where I was talking to somebody and you could tell their response was something they looked up. It was a canned response. It's like, okay, you got to tailor it to the person you're talking to.
I mean, part of what all ver incredible points, and it's just a matter of, again, putting your best foot forward and presenting yourself in the manner that's going to sell you, and it also demonstrates your interest in the role. And I think along those lines, I know that it's important to find a job, and I know that sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures, but why are you applying for jobs if you can't really show that you really want the job? I don't know. I think that's a hard one for me to understand. Like would it be better to apply for less jobs and really focus on the ones that you want? Now, for me, I'll tell you what really works. This is a good one for people to think through, is there's nothing wrong with researching the leaders on the team and either reaching out to them in a respectful way or reading some of the things that they've written, listening to a podcast that they've been on, being able to just show that you made that little effort, and that stands out because flattery does matter. And more importantly, it's a form of commitment that shows that you tried and you did your homework, and that you are really interested in learning more. And if you can't answer the question, what do you know about this company, then you really haven't done your homework. And that's one of the first questions that I would ask.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good question. Another one I always enjoy as a question is, how did you prepare for this interview?
I like that.
And it's interesting some of the responses I've heard and I've been through with that. And so I like that question too, because it tells you like someone like you could tell they didn't prepare it at all. And others,
Hmm.
they're like, oh, well, I researched the company and this is what I found and all that stuff. I know one of them like just pulled up some of the awards I had. They're like, oh yeah, I found that you got this reward and all that stuff. So yes, flattery is important, but it's not a driving factor. I want to make sure our listeners know that is if you're only getting a job because you flattered the person, then that's not the perfect job for you.
You have to back it up for
Yeah,
sure. But it's a great way to stand out. And I think that just getting in the door, if you have the right makeup and tools, you will be able to prove that.
yeah.
Um, but it's how do you get yourself in the door and say that I'm the one that you should be considering.
No, I agree. And I think there's also one thing I always say to add to that is getting your foot in the door. I really want to say there's two ways you can do it. And this goes back to what we talked about selling yourself. You can do the traditional way of, applying, putting hit the sneaker net, going there, applying, talking to people, making phone calls, which requires work, and good work to do. Or the other one that still requires work, but is another way. And I kind of call it almost like a back door, but you still got to be able to sell yourself and put the work in and show your worth is build your network.
Yep.
'Kay, if your network knows you, they can start pointing you into directions. Um, I would say probably, I had this um with one job I applied for a couple years ago. I applied for it, I didn't get it. But one thing I loved about it was the hiring manager called me, explained to me I didn't get it, went to a more seasoned person, which totally makes sense. But then he went and he's like, how can I help you advance your career? And that has stuck with me since that conversation. And it's been great. And I think that we need to do more of that, build your network, get out there on the socials, and because people will see what you can do. And yeah, maybe I don't have a position for you, but I'd be like, hey, John Smith is a great programmer. And I know, QSC, I know their developing team over with Hope, and they were looking for someone. Hey, let's make that connection. Maybe it goes nowhere, but maybe it does. Um, and again, I don't know if Hope seems looking for anyone. I'm just pulled
Yeah.
names out of the hat there. And I don't know a John Smith. So no trade secrets being said there.
As we wrap up, let's just tie this back to a programmer maybe finding their next role. Um, any specific tips that you would? I know we've talked about this a little bit about the differences of career paths in management versus being a really advanced technical person. Those are some things to think about. But any other ideas that come to mind?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I think society has always taught us that, as you advance, you always end up into a management role. And not everyone wants to be a manager. Not, I mean, and nothing wrong with that. Like, and some people are not good managers and they shouldn't be there. Um, So we need to break that stereotype that, society that, you come in entry level, then you senior level, then you're management, and then you're C level. Like, not everyone wants that kind of path. There's clearly nothing wrong with saying, hey, I want to be a senior developer, and that's highest I want to go. But with that, I think what the downturn is comes down to the value then the company puts on that person. Because then the company is bring people up in the management, we want to bring them up to C-suite on, so and the pay scales depending on that. So if you stick out as a senior developer, you might top out on how much you can make. And I think that is a disservice to some of the people. So the way I kind of, and it's kind of like the whole um bottled water saying. You buy a bottle of water at a grocery store, it's like $1. If you go to the movies, it's like $5. If you're on an airplane, it's $8. You go to a ballpark, it's $15 for the same bottle of water. It's the environment that changes the value. And why can't we do that for people who don't want to go into those management senior suites, C suites, and just want to say as a senior tech, give them those value, don't keep them at the store value, get them up to the ballpark value.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept to think about, and I think you've shared that before. But I like that a lot, and I, there's a couple of factors there. One is being able to demonstrate the value and that you provide and how the company benefits, as you mentioned. How much where you are may not be, and what you are really good at may be misaligned with what the company is looking for and what the company is able to sell. So that may require making a move. Um, and I always think about the idea of being able to specialize in an area and be really good at doing one or two things, which will help you to advance and distinguish yourself. But you really have to look for those opportunities, and I think that they're out there, and I think that it may require moving from an integrator to a third party, or moving from a third party to a manufacturer, or moving from a manufacturer to a corporate role. I mean, there could moves like that may be required where there's a almost a disproportionate value being put on your skills because that organization really needs what you do, and as long as you can demonstrate that. But and I think kind of that comes down to investing in yourself, and being able to hone those skills and do the things that you need to do to better yourself and build your resume. Hopefully that's for the company that you continue to work for, because I wouldn't want to be somebody who is promoting job hopping, or people leaving organizations if they're valued and they have a good home. But those things do happen.
Yes, they do happen. And I don't think job hopping is horrible. If the current company cannot provide that value that we're
Right.
talking about, like you're saying.
Right.
I've actually said that to my employees. Like, I will never hold anyone back. I will do whatever I can to help advance their career. If it's with us, great. If not, I fully understand. So, like, I want my team to do better than me.
Mhm.
That's what I try to set them out to do is, advance their career, find where their new path is. And I think that kind of is a good way is find that leader or that mentor, somebody who's either, your supervisor or this a close friend who's willing to help you prepare for your next step. I think that would be a good way to help advance your career as a programmer.
Good place for us to wrap this one, I think. And it's a good topic, and hopefully our audience finds this to be very valuable. I know it's a hot button topic in the industry and probably beyond. So please feel free to share this episode. Let us know what you think, and share your experiences, feedback, thoughts, positive or negative, in our LinkedIn group for Ask the Programmer. Please hop in there and let us know what you think. James, how can people get in touch with you and continue this conversation and follow up on anything that we've talked about?
Oh, Uh, you can get me on the socials. I'm on X at AV_James King, LinkedIn. You can find me in the Ask the Programming community there. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
Absolutely. And for me, you could find me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. And my company, Control Concepts, helps programmers get their projects done a little bit more efficiently and seamlessly by creating the modules, drivers, and plugins that interface with manufacturers' products and also provide added functionality. And you could find that at controlconcepts.net. We definitely want to hear from you. So please reach out to us and let us know what you think if you're interested in being a guest. We've certainly had our fair share of real all-star guests in past episodes. Would like to continue to do so. So please reach out and either raise your hand or pitch an idea, and we'd certainly like to have you. And we'd also like to help to spread the word about this podcast and some of the topics that we've been talking about. So it would really be an honor if you would share your favorite episode and also post in our LinkedIn group for Ask the Programmer. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.